Hey team, this is Nathan from RunDreamAchieve.com. Today's topic, I want to discuss the differences between drinking during a marathon versus sipping in a race. And drinking is absolutely critical. If you want to run effectively over the marathon distance, you cannot skimp on this. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my own career when I was starting running marathons in 2002. I was thinking that I could run the whole marathon race with just a few, maybe the equivalent of 2 Dixie cups. That is not enough when it comes to racing over 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers. You have to be more strategic in how you hydrate during your races. So, because your body is absolutely, your body needs that additional hydration. You cannot, your muscles desperately need a more amount of fluid going in the body as you're racing. And you also have to focus too on practicing drinking rather than so that you have to practice drinking in training so that you go into the race knowing what your stomach can handle and how much is too much and how much is too little. And one of the biggest mistakes you definitely do not want to continue to make is sipping in the race. Sipping and just taking in just a small amounts of fluid in a marathon is not going to get you to the finish line in record time. Granted, there are a lot of different components that you have to pay attention to run a fast marathon. You have to focus on your taper. You have to train well below your goal race pace so that you get that race pace to feel more manageable. You don't want to focus so much on high volume and neglect what's critical to race fast over the marathon distance, which is doing one VO2 max workout a week, doing faster, very paced long runs, alternating the following week by a nice, easy, relaxed long run. There are a lot of different factors that go into running a fast marathon, but drinking during a marathon is essential. You have to, this is probably one of the most important parts of starting and finishing your race in record time. Ensuring that you're hydrated well enough. I mean, your body, especially if it's hot and humid out, you have to drink more fluid. And what I would do in my own training, what I still do in marathon training, is I always put out water bottles, usually every 3 miles during my course, so that when I'm heading out, I can pick it up, drink just about the entire contents of the bottle, and then on my way back, I can grab it again and drink more. If you look at the top middle to long distance runners, any road races, you always see marathoners especially drinking, and they'll sit there and they'll be running in stride and focusing on staying on pace, but they're also drinking during the race. And granted, there's a lot of athletes that don't have the luxury of having water bottles, their own elite water bottles sat out on tables like the elite athletes do, and don't feel like stopping for a few seconds is going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt you. I mean, what's really going to hurt you is if you continue to bypass those aid stations and choose not to drink at all. Remember, this is 42.2 kilometers, this is 26.2 miles, 42.2 kilometers that you have to focus on racing. So I do get asked quite a bit, in terms of how much fluid I should be taking in during the race. That's going to be individual for each athlete. So my best recommendation is to make sure that you're practicing hydration and that you're practicing drinking in training first, so that you can find out how much fluid your body can take in, how much how much your stomach can withstand, and how much is too little and too much. But you don't want to run a marathon drinking the equivalent of 1 to 2 Dixie cups. That's a very small amount of fluid over that particular distance. I mean, if it was a 5K or a 10K, even those distances, maybe a 5K I can understand. Maybe 1 or 2 Dixie cups would be enough. But in a marathon distance, when you're racing over that duration of time, your muscles are desperately going to need fluid as well as those gel packets. A lot of times marathoners don't ingest those gel packets during the race. Each one of those gels contain anywhere from 100 to 150 calories that you can get immediately to your bloodstream if you ingest them during the race. I recommend taking in about 3 to 4 of those during the marathon race. That way you have that additional glycogen in your bloodstream, in your muscles to call upon. Because again, like I mentioned in other videos, we have a small amount of carbohydrate storage at any given time, usually around 17 to 1800 calories. And a lot of times athletes hit the so-called wall right around mile 17 or 18 because you're burning about 100 calories per mile. So it's not uncommon for most athletes to start really hurting and to hit a wall, usually right around mile 17 or 18. So you can combat against that if you are hydrating well, practicing that in training, and you're ingesting a combination of the proper amount of fluid during the race as well as sugars during the race. Again, training also well below goal race pace, and training at your anaerobic threshold for longer periods of time in training will help you to train in such a way and race in such a way where you're calling on fat storage to fuel your race and to conserve what you have less of, which is carbohydrate. And again, if you are ingesting 3 to 4 of those gel packets during your marathon and not saying, okay, I'm just going to run this race without ingesting any of these, you're going to set yourself up for success. You're going to have a much better chance of starting the race and finishing the race and running as effectively and as efficiently as you possibly can because you're hydrating well in the race. You've done it in practice. You've trained to drink during training, and you're going to go into your race. And drinking during a marathon is one of the key tactics to run a great race. There's no doubt about it. You cannot neglect this. You can't just say, I'm going to bypass the aid stations, or maybe I'll drink a half a Dixie cup, or I'll grab a Dixie cup once or twice in the race. That's just not enough fluid. So don't make this mistake. If you're having problems, if you've had problems in the past with hydration, this is something you can work on, as I had to work on as well. I had to get beyond thinking that I could run 26.2 miles or 42.2 kilometers drinking the equivalent of 1 or 2 Dixie cups. That's just not enough. I would blow up in the latter stages of the race. Sometimes I even not going out too fast in the race, especially on hot and humid days, I really struggled because oftentimes we become dehydrated before we even know it. And that's what you don't want to do. You want to make sure that you're hydrating well prior to the start of your race, during the race, and especially after the race, because you're going to lose several pounds of fluid after a marathon race. So it's really important to pay attention to your nutrition. I'll leave links below this video as well to my other website, nutritiongeeks.com. There are resources there as well for you. If nutrition is absolutely essential for running well over the marathon distance or any distance. But drinking during a marathon is what you have to start learning to do, and do it now. Because in the past, if you focused on training very well anaerobically, you've gotten very strong in terms of your endurance runs, your long runs, your tempo runs, but you haven't paid attention to teaching yourself to drink in that race and just have gotten by with sipping. I guarantee you, if you start improving this particular area of your preparation in training as well as when you race, you're going to drop massive amounts of time off your marathon current personal best, because you can't just do one thing right and expect to run a great marathon. You have to do a lot of little things right, correctly, and be patient enough and be persistent enough for a long enough period of time to get it right. And drinking during a marathon rather than sipping in a marathon race will make sure that you have plenty of fluid, you're not dehydrated, you've also paid attention to ingesting gels. Even go out and buy a few of those gels and practice that in your long runs for your preparation for your marathons. Practice taking in those gels a couple times during your long run. And there's also times where you just want to drink water and where you don't want to ingest any gels in a long run, because you do want to teach the body to rely on fat rather than carbohydrate. So there are pluses and minuses to both of these ways of preparing for your marathons. There are athletes, coaches that teach ingesting water and gels during long runs in training, but also just relying on water in training as well. That way you're teaching the body to rely on what it has much more of, and that's fat storage. So again, if you're going to run a fast marathon, drinking during a marathon is one of the key tactics to do it, and to do it well. But also, don't forget all the other tactics I've touched on in other videos. If you really want to take your training and racing to another level in terms of the marathon or any distance, I highly recommend checking out the courses and training plans on RunDreamAchieve.com. There are smarter ways to train. Again, it's not the hardest working athlete that gets the best results. It's the smartest athlete that's training using leverage. Leverage simply means doing more with less. So we all have been taught how to work hard. Hardest working athletes don't always get the results. So start changing up now how you train for your races, especially how you hydrate during your races. Find out in training how much fluid your stomach can ingest and how much you can take. So that way you don't get to the race and you feel like you start getting cramps in the early stages of your marathon. Make sure you're practicing this in training and not sipping in the race. Make sure you are drinking during your marathon event. I hope this video is helpful for you. If you're brand new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so when I make a new video, you'll be notified of it. And again, there's resources below all of my videos, so make sure you check below in the description for those. And if there's anything else I can help you all out with in your marathon training, or if you're a middle distance runner and you have questions, feel free to leave me a comment below the video, and I'll definitely respond back to you. Wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.